Language is a structured system of communication that consists of grammar and vocabulary. It is the primary means by which humans convey meaning, both in spoken and signed forms, and may also be conveyed through writing. Human language is characterized by its cultural and historical diversity, with significant variations observed between cultures and across time. Human languages possess the properties of productivity and displacement, which enable the creation of an infinite number of sentences, and the ability to refer to objects, events, and ideas that are not immediately present in the discourse. The use of human language relies on social convention and is acquired through learning. Estimates of the number of human languages in the world vary between 5,000 and 7,000. Precise estimates depend on an arbitrary distinction, dichotomy, established between languages and dialects. Natural languages are spoken, signed, or both. However, any language can be encoded into secondary media using auditory, visual, or tactile stimuli, for example, writing, whistling, signing, or braille. In other words, human language is modality independent, but written or signed language is the way to inscribe or encode the natural human speech or gestures. Depending on philosophical perspectives regarding the definition of language and meaning, when used as a general concept, language may refer to the cognitive ability to learn and use systems of complex communication, or to describe the set of rules that makes up these systems, or the set of utterances that can be produced from those rules. All languages rely on the process of semiosis to relate signs to particular meanings. Oral, manual, and tactile languages contain a phonological system that governs how symbols are used to form sequences known as words or morphemes, and a syntactic system that governs how words and morphemes are combined to form phrases and utterances. The scientific study of language is called linguistics. Critical examinations of languages, such as philosophy of language, the relationships between language and thought, how words represent experience, etc., have been debated at least since Gorgias and Plato in ancient Greek civilization. Thinkers such as Jean-Jacques Rousseau, 1712–1778, have argued that language originated from emotions, while others like Immanuel Kant, 1724–1804, have argued that languages originated from rational and logical thought. 20th-century philosophers such as Ludwig Wittgenstein, 1889–1951, argued that philosophy is really the study of language itself. Major figures in contemporary linguistics include Ferdinand de Saussure and Noam Chomsky. Language is thought to have gradually diverged from earlier primate communication systems when early hominins acquired the ability to form a theory of mind and shared intentionality. This development is sometimes thought to have coincided with an increase in brain volume, and many linguists see the structures of language as having evolved to serve specific communicative and social functions. Language is processed in many different locations in the human brain, but especially in Broca's and Wernicke's areas. Humans acquire language through social interaction in early childhood, and children generally speak fluently by approximately 3 years old. Language and culture are codependent. Therefore, in addition to its strictly communicative uses, language has social uses such as signifying group identity, social stratification, as well as use for social grooming and entertainment. Languages evolve and diversify over time, and the history of their evolution can be reconstructed by comparing modern languages to determine which traits their ancestral languages must have had in order for the later developmental stages to occur. A group of languages that descend from a common ancestor is known as a language family. In contrast, a language that has been demonstrated not to have any living or non-living relationship with another language is called a language isolate. There are also many unclassified languages whose relationships have not been established, and spurious languages may have not existed at all. Academic consensus holds that between 50% and 90% of languages spoken at the beginning of the 21st century will probably have become extinct by the year 2100. Language is a system of communication that uses conventional symbols, whether spoken, signed, or written. It allows people to express themselves as members of a social group and participants in its culture. The functions of language include communication, expressing identity, imaginative expression, play, and emotional release. Every language evolves, with changes occurring constantly as language is learned and passed from one generation to the next. These changes affect pronunciation, word forms, syntax, and word meanings. Language is a crucial instrument of socialization. Societies use language to pass on myths, laws, customs, and beliefs to the next generation. Humans use language for many reasons, including to transmit thoughts, communicate, and understand the world. Language is a uniquely human attribute with no parallels in the animal kingdom. Functions and importance of language. Communication and expression. Language allows people to share information, beliefs, feelings, and emotions. It enables the expression of national or local identity and is a common source of conflict in multi-ethnic situations. Socialization. Language is crucial for socialization, as it helps pass down myths, laws, customs, and beliefs from one generation to the next. Children learn to appreciate the structure of their society and their place in it through language. Thought and understanding. Language is closely connected with thought, enabling complex and diverse human thinking. It allows people to describe the past, speculate about the future, and consider different scenarios. Specialized languages, like those used in mathematics and science, enable the construction of theories and predictions. Culture. Language is a part of culture, with society and language being mutually indispensable. Human society can only be maintained through the use and understanding of a common language. Innovation and knowledge. Language allows for the explanation of skills, techniques, and inventions, making the results of inventiveness available to others. The invention of writing further enhanced this process, and modern technology has made knowledge accessible worldwide, contributing to rapid scientific, technological, political, and social advancements. Cognitive abilities. Language involves several mental faculties and depends on perceptual articulatory and conceptual intentional systems. The recursive property of language enables humans to combine concepts in limitless ways, facilitating cooperation and planning. Languages can be classified in two ways, genetic and typological. Genetic classification groups languages into families based on their historical relatedness, such as the Indo-European family with subfamilies like Germanic and Celtic. Typological classification groups languages by their structural characteristics, such as isolating, agglutinating, and inflecting languages. Examples of languages by number of native speakers include Chinese, Spanish, English, Arabic and Hindi. There are also programming languages, which are used to implement software on a computer. Examples of programming languages include Fortran, Algol, BASIC, and COBOL. People learn languages through a combination of innate abilities and environmental factors. From infancy, humans possess a natural capacity for language acquisition, enabling them to internalize grammatical rules from exposure to spoken language. Children demonstrate an ability to construct novel, grammatically correct sentences, distinguishing them from mere repetition. Verbal stimulation and social interaction are crucial, as is the sensitivity of caregivers to an infant's vocalizations. While biological factors provide a foundation, interaction with others is necessary for language development. Methods such as grammar translation, direct and audiolingual approaches facilitate foreign language instruction, each with varying emphasis on reading, writing, and oral communication. Immersion programs can also promote language learning. Language is a communication system using symbols to express ideas, feelings, and influence others. It facilitates the sharing of information, beliefs, attitudes, and emotions, creating a common history and life experience. People use language to express identity, and it also has playful and imaginative functions seen in puns, poetry, and religious expression. Though other animals communicate, human language stands out for its limitless creativity. Verbal expressions can be spontaneous, like cheers, or deliberate, like a heartfelt apology or love poem. Facial expressions, tone of voice, and gestures also contribute to communication, sometimes independently of the words used. Languages evolve through constant change, influenced by cultural transmission from one generation to the next. These shifts occur in pronunciation, word forms, syntax, and word meanings, accumulating gradually over generations. Vocabulary changes can be rapid, especially in areas tied to cultural shifts like technology or slang. Internal factors such as assimilation and assimilation also drive language change, as do external factors such as population movement, contact between languages, and the borrowing of words. While some try to preserve a language's purity, they rarely succeed in preventing change. Language, a system of conventional spoken, manual, signed, or written symbols by means of which human beings, as members of a social group and participants in its culture, express themselves. The functions of language include communication, the expression of identity, play, imaginative expression, and emotional release. Many definitions of language have been proposed. Henry Sweet, an English phonetician and language scholar, stated, "Language is the expression of ideas by means of speech sounds combined into words. Words are combined into sentences, this combination answering to that of ideas into thoughts." The American linguists Bernard Bloch and George L. Tridger formulated the following definition: a language is a system of arbitrary vocal symbols by means of which a social group cooperates. Any succinct definition of language makes a number of presuppositions and begs a number of questions. The first, for example, puts excessive weight on thought, and the second uses arbitrary in a specialized, though legitimate, way. Language, as described above, is species-specific to human beings. Other members of the animal kingdom have the ability to communicate, through vocal noises or by other means, but the most important single feature characterizing human language, that is, every individual language, against every known mode of animal communication, is its infinite productivity and creativity. Human beings are unrestricted in what they can communicate, no area of experience is accepted as necessarily incommunicable, though it may be necessary to adapt one's language in order to cope with new discoveries or new modes of thought. Animal communication systems are by contrast very tightly circumscribed in what may be communicated. Indeed, displaced reference, the ability to communicate about things outside immediate temporal and spatial contiguity, which is fundamental to speech, is found elsewhere only in the so-called language of bees. Bees are able, by carrying out various conventionalized movements, referred to as bee dances, in or near the hive, to indicate to others the locations and strengths of food sources. But food sources are the only known theme of this communication system. Surprisingly, however, this system, nearest to human language in function, belongs to a species remote from humanity in the animal kingdom. On the other hand, the animal performance superficially most like human speech, the mimicry of parrots and of some other birds that have been kept in the company of humans, is wholly derivative and serves no independent communicative function. Humankind's nearest relatives among the primates, though possessing a vocal physiology similar to that of humans, have not developed anything like a spoken language. Attempts to teach sign language to chimpanzees and other apes through imitation have achieved limited success, though the interpretation of the significance of ape signing ability remains controversial. Language interacts with every aspect of human life in society, and it can be understood only if it is considered in relation to society. This article attempts to survey language in this light and to consider its various functions and the purposes it can and has been made to serve. Because each language is both a working system of communication in the period and in the community wherein it is used and also the product of its history and the source of its future development, any account of language must consider it from both these points of view. The science of language is known as linguistics. It includes what are generally distinguished as descriptive linguistics and historical linguistics. Linguistics is now a highly technical subject. It embraces, both descriptively and historically, such major divisions as phonetics, grammar, including syntax and morphology, semantics and pragmatics, dealing in detail with these various aspects of language. Languages are immensely complicated structures. One soon realizes how complicated any language is when trying to learn it as a second language. If one tries to frame an exhaustive description of all the rules embodied in one's language, the rules by means of which a native user is able to produce and understand an infinite number of correct, well-formed sentences, one can easily appreciate the complexity of the knowledge that a child acquires while mastering a native vernacular. The descriptions of languages written so far are in most cases excellent as far as they go, but they still omit more than they contain of an explicit account of native users' competence in their language, whether that language is English, Swahili, or Japanese Sign Language, Nihon Shuwa. Likewise, ongoing work in the study of language has underscored just how much effort is needed to bring palpable fact within systematic statement. The most obvious aspect of language is speech. Speech is not essential to the definition of an infinitely productive communication system, such as is constituted by a language. But, in fact, speech is the universal material of most human language, and the conditions of speaking and hearing have, throughout human history, shaped and determined its development. The study of the anatomy, physiology, neurology, and acoustics of speaking is called phonetics. This subject is dealt with further below. See physiological and physical basis of speech. Articulatory phonetics relates to the physiology of speech, and acoustic phonetics relates to the physics of sound waves, i.e., their transmission and reception. Phonetics covers much of the ground loosely referred to in language study as pronunciation. But, from a rather different point of view, speech sounds are also studied in phonology. Spoken language makes use of a very wide range of the articulations and resultant sounds that are available within the human vocal and auditory resources. Each spoken language uses a somewhat different range, and this is partly responsible for the difficulty of learning to speak a foreign language and for speaking it with an accent. But mere repertoires of sounds are not all that is involved. Far fewer general classes of sounds are distinctive, carry meaning differences, in any language than the number of sounds that are actually phonetically different. The English T sounds at the beginning and end of tot and in the two places in stouter are all different, though these differences are not readily noticed by English speakers, and, rightly, the same letter is used for them all. Similar statements could be made about most or all of the other consonant and vowel sounds in English. What is distinctive in one language may not be distinctive in another or may be used in a different way. This is an additional difficulty to be overcome in learning a foreign language. In Chinese and in several other languages loosely called tone languages, the pitch, or tone, on which a syllable is said helps to distinguish one word from another. Ma in Northern Chinese on a level tone means mother, on a rising tone means hemp, and on a falling tone means to curse. In English and in most of the languages of Europe, though not all Swedish and Norwegian are exceptions, pitch differences do not distinguish one word from another but form part of the intonation tunes that contribute to the structure and structural meaning of spoken sentences. Languages differ in the ways in which consonant and vowel sounds can be grouped into syllables in words. English and German tolerate several consonants before and after a single vowel. Strengths has 3 consonant sounds before and 3 after a single vowel sound. Ng and th stand for 1 sound each. Italian does not have such complex syllables, and in Japanese and Swahili, for example, the ratio of consonant and vowel sounds in syllables and in words is much more even. Speakers of such languages find English words of the sort just mentioned very hard to pronounce, though to a native speaker of English they are perfectly natural in this context meaning within the sounds and sound sequences whose mastery is acquired in early childhood as part of one's primary language. All these considerations relating to the use of speech sounds in particular languages fall under the general heading of phonology, which may be defined as the sound system of a language. Phonology is often regarded as one component of language structure. Another component of language structure is grammar. There is more to language than sounds, and words are not to be regarded as merely sequences of syllables. The concept of the word is a grammatical concept. In speech, words are not separated by pauses, but they are recognized as recurrent units that make up sentences. Very generally, grammar is concerned with the relations between words in sentences. Classes of words, or parts of speech, as they are often called, are distinguished because they occupy different places in sentence structure, and in most languages some of them appear in different forms according to their function: English man, men, walk, walked, I, me, and so on. Languages differ in the extent to which word form variation is used in their grammar. Classical Chinese had almost none, English does not have much, and Latin and Greek had quite a lot. Conversely, English makes much more use of word order in grammar than did Latin or Greek. Language exists to be meaningful. The study of meaning, both in general theoretical terms and in reference to a specific language, is known as semantics. Semantics embraces the meaningful functions of phonological features, such as intonation, and of grammatical structures and the meanings of individual words. It is this last domain, the lexicon, that forms much of the subject matter of semantics. The word stock of a language is very large. The Oxford English Dictionary, for example, consists of some 600,000 words. When the lexicons of specialized, dialectal, and global varieties of English are taken into account, this total must easily exceed 1 million. The lexicons of less widely used languages can be just as large. Signed languages and gesture languages have the same linguistic components as spoken languages. Although they do not involve speech sounds, they have their own grammar, syntax, and morphology. Sign language is most often used in deaf communities, although it is also sometimes used by hearing people when they are unable to communicate verbally. Although some sign languages are related to spoken languages, often within a geographic community, such as American Spoken English and American Sign Language, they are not necessarily direct translations. The scope, history, and unique linguistic and sociological characteristics of sign language are too broad to be fully discussed here. For further treatment of the subject, see sign language. A language is a symbol system. It may be regarded, because of its infinite flexibility and productivity, as the symbol system par excellence. But there are other symbol systems recognized and institutionalized in the different cultures of humankind. Examples of these exist on maps and blueprints and in the conventions of representational art, example the golden halos around the heads of saints in religious paintings. Other symbol systems are musical notation and dance notation, wherein graphic symbols designate musical pitches and other features of musical performance and the movements of formalized dances. More loosely, because music itself can convey and arouse emotions and certain musical forms and structures are often associated with certain types of feeling, one frequently reads of the language of music or even of the grammar of music. The terms language and grammar are here being used metaphorically, however, if only because no symbol system other than language has the same potential of infinite productivity, extension, and precision. Languages are used by human beings to communicate with other human beings. Derivatively, bits of languages may be used by humans to control machinery, as when different buttons and switches are marked with words or phrases designating their functions. A specialized development of human-machine language is seen in computer programming languages, which provide the means whereby sets of instructions and data of various kinds are supplied to computers in forms acceptable to these machines. Various types of such languages are employed for different purposes. In societies in which literacy is all but universal and language teaching at school begins with reading and writing in the native tongue, one is apt to think of language as a writing system that may be pronounced. In point of fact, language generally begins as a system of spoken communication that may be represented in various ways in writing. Thank you for watching this video.